often most difficult people are hurting people. They are people that are deeply wounded.
Hi, welcome back to another week of Behind and Beyond. This week, I get the pleasure of sitting down with Pastor Scott, and we're jumping into a new series into the book of James. We're going to begin looking at trials in people's lives and what it means to count it all joy. Scott, great to have you here.
Hey, how are you? It's
Good to have you. Happy spring.
Happy spring. It has sprung.
Yeah, I was hoping I wonder if we could even do this podcast outside. Is there a way to move us out there? You've got your Pirates shirt on.
I do.
Yeah. Have you been into any games yet?
No, I think I'm going to go this week.
Okay, great.
Chicago's in town. Yep.
How was Easter, coming off of Easter break? We've been out. We haven't had the podcast for a couple of weeks because of Easter services and everything else going on. So did you have a good Easter?
It was good. It was different. We celebrated the week before. So because my daughter, Alyssa, and son-in-law met with the kids, they were going to go to his side of the family for Easter. So we decided like Palm Sunday, that was, we did it real big then. So Easter was like, actually really
peaceful,
really chill. Usually I come out of Easter services after talking to like 2,000 people, and then I just don't want to talk to anybody. I just want to go home and sit on the couch. So, we just chilled. It was good.
I have word from a listener of the podcast that they said their favorite part of the podcast is when you are on it and when I ask you icebreakers, because you get really uncomfortable. So
I can't stand icebreakers.
Well, I've got a great one for you. You ready?
Dumbest thing I've ever. Oh, you got one.
Not really. Off the top of my head, I'm trying to make one up.
You were an animal. What
would you be an Easter bunny or a chick? Okay, I do have a real question for you because this is a debate in my house. So, do you guys with your girls growing up? Did you hide Easter eggs? First of all, did you do an Easter egg hunt?
We did hit Easter baskets. I don't know.
Oh,
about
baskets,
eggs.
not eggs.
Yeah, I don't know about eggs.
Oh, well,
I think we went to those Easter egg hunt things and stuff.
Okay.
Like
you threw a whole wrench into my question.
Oh, sorry.
This is
yes, I did. I
don't know. Hiding Easter baskets. I wonder if that's a Pennsylvania thing. I didn't grow up with that.
You didn't do that,
but everyone I talk to here is like, oh yeah, you hide the basket.
Hide the basket. Yeah, that's what we did.
A friend at church, Andrea Stoffer, if she's listening, was talking. Her parents one year took it very seriously and hid it on the roof of their house. So they took it to like another level. Yeah. Okay. Well, then my question might not make sense for you, but Zach and my husband and I have a kind of hot debate on this because he grew up with plastic eggs that they hid around the yard with like money or candy inside.
Yeah. And
my Easter bunny hid the eggs that we dyed, like real hard-boiled eggs.
Did you just sit down with some salt and eat them, or have you found them?
We did turn them into lunch later. Yeah, they became deviled eggs later at our...
I don't know, with Zach.
It's kind of like...
I've never heard of that in my life.
You find... No one has.
Virginia, right?
Everyone I talk
where
to.
You grew up?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a West Virginia.
But
thing.
Everyone I talk to is like, that's so gross. Why would you?
What if you didn't find one? It would sit out there and get all stinky.
But everyone's so grossed out about it. But I don't know where they think eggs come from. They come from outside. It's not like, it's fine. They're outside. So you go find your.
Wow.
Yeah, and you can eat one. You can put some salt on it.
It's sort of sad.
Oh, wow.
You didn't get jelly beans and money in your
No, I didn't. No. So my kids
what if
now.
you didn't like hard-boiled eggs?
You learn to, I guess. I could take a whole tray of deviled eggs in one.
Yeah, I don't mind
sitting.
Them.
Yeah.
Hard-boiled eggs, yeah.
We turned them into deviled eggs usually for Easter dinner. So you find them and then they get made into.
Us growing, or with my kids when they were little, my little one for whatever reason got scared to death that there's some kind of a bunny, a rabbit coming into the house and like hiding stuff. And
it is kind of scary when you think about it. Yeah, it is kind of.
So we had to tell her, like, all right.
Yeah.
With Santa, we had to tell her because she was freaked out. He's going to come down the chimney in our house. And
so that's funny.
She was like 3 or 4 years old. We had to break the whole thing. We don't tell your older sister.
Did she tell her older sister?
I think she probably did. And then when she went to school, we're like, don't be telling the kids at school there's no Santa.
Erin is probably not as conniving as my younger sister because listen to this. So I went hard into believing in things like the tooth fairy because I felt like if I told my parents I didn't believe I wouldn't get the cash anymore. So I mean, for way too long, like middle school. I'm still like, hope that tooth fairy comes, you know.
Hope those hard-boiled eggs are sitting out in the lawn this year.
But my younger sister was very kind of could not take no for an answer, and she was sure there was no tooth fairy. And so she, very young, would like fall asleep. She'd wrap her whole body on top of her pillow to catch the tooth fairy, you know. Nice. And she did catch the tooth fairy. And then she bribed the tooth fairy that for every tooth I lost, the tooth fairy had to pay her $2. I got $1 for a lost tooth, and she got $2 to not tell me that it's all fake. And so she was making double what I was our whole childhood.
Cashing in.
I know.
Smart girl. Yeah.
And my parents went with it. So, I mean, the tooth fairy went with it. So, yeah.
Of course.
Well, you never know. There's kids listening. So.
Are we done with the icebreaker?
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. You're done with the chit chat.
We're done with
all right. Yeah, we can be done. This is your trial, as we're talking about counting it all joy. So, you know, we didn't get a chance to really end on the podcast about the series, The Way and Studying the Practices of Jesus. We're moving kind of into James. I wonder if you can help us bridge the gap. How do you see the study and the work we did on the practices of following Jesus kind of even support us as we jump into the book of James, and particularly this first section of the book of James where we're looking at trials and how we're supposed to walk through them as believers?
I think it was week 1 or early on, whatever the first one that Dave spoke in the series, and he used that line, you know, when it comes to the way, it's not how we, it's about how we travel, not just where we travel. So then it went, basically it was a spiritual discipline series, when we're looking at different spiritual disciplines in our life, which I love. And for me, it was good because there's some that are, probably, I think with all of us, right? There's some we just naturally, like witnessing is easier for me, generosity, there's certain ones. But then when we hit some of the ones that, you know, fasting.
Yeah, I was curious, what were some of the ones that like challenged you?
I've never really been able to find great, whatever, soul care in that. Community, you know, I can be a bit of a loner, so in the community thing was probably another one. Prayer. I'm not this. I always like goof. I'm not the greatest prayer. I think I said it at 11 o'clock in Wexford. Like we were challenging people to come up front. And I was like, "Don't come to me. I'm terrible."
That's your opportunity to practice your discipline.
No, go to one of these folks that are, you know, been thinking about this all week and are ready. And you know, I'm scrambling trying to pull a sermon. So yeah. What I like about the book of James is you're going to see these threads of these through James, particularly in the second half of this series when we go through chapter by chapter, verse by verse. But what I like about the book of James is it's very blunt. Like James just says it. Here it is. So a lot of scholars believe that like you can see the Sermon on the Mount woven through James, like whether he was there when he wasn't quite sure who Jesus really was, but he brings back pieces of that throughout the book. But then you'll also pick up on a lot of the disciplines, a lot of the ways. Like I think I might have said it, like his book is challenging us to live this way, like live this way, radically different with extreme integrity, that it's all about our actions and our deeds. And I think there'll be a nice connection to that book. Yeah.
Thank you. That's a great bridge to think of how they go together.
Yeah.
You, I think, speaking of bridges, did just a really great job even setting up the book of James. I love how you... Zach and I were even talking about it after at lunch. It made me really excited to dive into the book of the James, especially when you put it in context of who he is and kind of walked through all these different places in scripture you see him pop up, and the way he's interacting with Jesus and the early church was really helpful. You did have the hard task of preaching kind of 2 sermons in one. You set us up for this beginning of the series. Well, really the whole series
like an
at
intro
large. And then you did the topic about the trials with difficult people. And so I'm curious, I'm sure there are other things you couldn't get to because of time limits. Anything that you would have liked to talk more about, or if you could have just done one or the other, where would you have camped?
I think if my whole sermon was on like difficult relationships or difficult people, I just blew through that little section that oftentimes they can divide us, distract us, and discredit us. I probably had a couple paragraphs under each of those, because ultimately, what are those three things? They are like schemes of the enemy to pull us from our faith. So, and I think that sometimes difficult people are placed in our lives to try to divide us, to try to distract us from what's important, and to try to discredit us based on how we respond to them. If we respond to a difficult person the way the rest of the world does, then why are we any different? You know, if we allow it to distract us from, and if we allow it to divide families or friendships. So I think I would have dug in there a little bit more. And then I said it, but I said that I think often most difficult people are hurting people. Yeah. They are people that are deeply wounded. I really believe that with all my heart. I think I would have like sat in that for quite a bit. That James later in the book, he talks a lot about the power of the tongue and about how like, man, your words and your mouth can get you in so much trouble. And I think most difficult relationships that have either discredited, divided, or distracted us is because we popped off. Like we said something to someone that we shouldn't have said, or that person that is difficult goaded us into foolishness, you know, or an improper response, or so I think I would have probably dug a little bit more into that. My wife always has this thing where like she'll always just say, you just have no idea what people are going through. You have no idea and she's an ICU nurse at McGee, so she deals with parents sometimes that are in the most challenging moment in their life. They've got a child that's, you know, born early or born sick, and sometimes they can be really aggressive. And so for her, she just, you know, just never know what's going on in their lives. You never know what has brought them in this spot. So I think all of us could take that lesson, that when we face somebody difficult, just realize they probably got wounded deeply by somebody. Yeah.
I think about that sometimes. That's interesting you brought up Tina's profession, because sometimes I can remember, so our oldest son spent time in the NICU and was in the NICU for a few weeks. Very tiny. He was 3 pounds when he was born. So very tiny. Yeah. He's huge now, but at the time it's incredibly scary. And I can remember you spend hours and hours and hours in the hospital, and then you walk out into the sunshine and nobody knows. Everybody's just going through their normal everyday life. And then you drive down the street and you get honked at because you're trying to take a left, you know, and there would be times where I'm just like, you have no idea. You're just rushing. And so I think about that even in traffic sometimes when people are difficult or moving slow or whatever. You just don't know what they're processing, you know, or what everyone's carrying around with them.
Difficult person at your work, you don't know what happened in the morning. Or what they know they got to go home to. The difficult neighbor, you know, it's just, I think we do have to be slow in those situations. And I'll be honest, it's something that challenges me. Like there's some people I see coming in the lobby at church. I'm like, oh boy, like.
Well, I think, do you know, it strikes me so much that even when James is writing to the church, it's not like there were churches on every corner. So you couldn't just hop around until you found a congregation that most seemed like you and like you were going to fit there. Really, you're coming together with all of these people where the only thing that you have in common with them is the Spirit. And so that's going to bring a lot of challenges. Everyone is coming with really different backgrounds, perspectives on the world. I mean, especially in the time of James, right? We've got Gentiles and Jews coming together. And so I'm curious what you think. Like, it seems like it's almost part of the design of the church in my mind, that you're coming together with the only commonality being the Spirit. And part of that is going to be that you're going to there are going to be people that are just difficult for you that aren't necessarily difficult people, but just personality wise, or you guys are just going to clash. What do you think the Lord wants to do through that?
I mean, I think he wants to bring it together, right? He wants people with different backgrounds, different ethnicities, different, ways, different political views, right? He wants it all in there. He wants us to mix it up. It should be a safe place to mix it up and not just disagree and bail.
Yeah.
Go look for another church. I think to disagree and dig in, to maybe just agree not to agree sometimes, but to do it with a love and with a kindness and with respect. I think our country sometimes has just lost its respect for one another. And the church should be a place where we should be able to have, like the Jerusalem Council, that I brought that up about that big, this argument breaks up about, what if they're Gentiles and they're coming to faith and they should have to do these things and stop doing these things. And those things happen in our church today. And even when somebody with reason like James steps up and tries to solve it, people, if it didn't go maybe their way, they'll just go look for someone a church that maybe thinks the way that they think. And I mean, obviously I love Northway, but I want to say it like I mean it. Like, I love our church, and I love the multi-site. I love the different. I got to spend 4 weeks at the South Hills new location, just meeting people from there that I had never met before. But I love that our churches are located in different areas, folks with different sort of backgrounds and views and stances, but we should all be able to huddle up around the word and do it with respect. So
yeah,
I think. Yeah, I don't know. We go to this church because they believe this, and 99% of the people do. Or we go to this church because they emphasize this, and there's just something good about diversity in that.
Well, I think that's a big part of sanctification. Yeah. That when you are around a table with people who think differently than you, and you can be open to having some of your views challenged, not in a negative way, but that's where conversation and the ability of maybe I should learn or grow something new, or maybe there's a story I don't understand, or maybe this person's perspective brings new clarity. I think that's where real growth and becoming more like Jesus happens. But it's uncomfortable. It's often very uncomfortable. And so it's choosing to lean into that rather than just trying to be fully integrated with people who think exactly like you, So, yeah. Okay, I think it's really interesting that I went back to the book of James to read the beginning, because I was like, does it really just start like this? Count it all joy when you face trials of many kinds. That's the beginning. And that is pretty much the very, other than
there's just a little introduction.
Hey, I'm James. I'm writing to you. Right. And then
it says that.
And then it says that. And I am no therapist, but I know that when someone's coming to you with a difficult situation or a trial, usually you don't say, suck it up, count it joy. So I think that's so interesting that James starts that way. It seems really radical if we really believe what he is saying. And so why do you think he just starts right off the bat, hey, you're probably suffering, but count it joy, and here's why?
I think joy meant something different when he said it. I didn't and I don't have it off the top of my head, but I looked at it the Greek, for that word, and it's not an emotion. It's this, I think I said, it's like a delight. It's a soul experience in the Lord, and a delight in in who he is and his ways and his purpose, different than happy. So I don't know. And I think I sort of said this too, but I'll example-wise. I remember being an early believer. I met the Lord in high school and started going to this one church. And there was this older woman there, Lydia, who had a tremendous, difficult life. Oh my gosh, war bride, crazy stuff, abusive stuff at home. But she was the most joyful woman I'd ever met in my life. So she talked about being joyful despite. So to me, I think that's what James is talking about. He's talking about that you can evaluate, calculate, count it, joy when these things do roll into your lives, because you've got the delight of the Lord. And so the circumstance may be really challenging, because I think like we're going to get to some, I think, more challenging trials than difficult people. Come on. Like, you know what I mean? I felt like that was a bit of the softball. Like, we're all got difficult people in our life. Like, come on. If that causes you to steal your joy, then you got to check that spiritual maturity meter, because that shouldn't. We should be able to get through that one. But yeah, when you get into some topics, like really, there's a lot of grief with it and a lot of real struggle. I think we've got to be able to evaluate, are we going to allow this to steal that joy, or are we going to be able to place our trust in the Lord and have him see it through?
I was listening to another podcast actually with Annie F. Downs. I don't know if you're familiar with her. So she has a podcast called That Sounds Fun. So, you know, that's like right up my alley. But anyway, she was talking about fun, and fun and joy are different, right? But she said, she was talking about fun as a spiritual discipline, in the sense that she thinks that moment where you are, it's a Friday night and you're going out to get guac with friends before the football game, and you're just having joy of being in this community, that little moment of like pure, this is so nice, I wish this could continue forever, is kind of a glimpse for the believer of what heaven is.
Oh, I like that.
And so this idea that a non-believer now you might go to the guac and you might not realize that your team's going to lose the game later, and a kid might break his leg. Like, there's going to be other things, but there's this moment of like real joy because you're around people you love and you're having fellowship and community, or you're doing something that's really maybe gardening or some, other things that bring us these little glimpses of joy. For a believer, it's just a signpost of this is going to be forever.
I like that.
And so those now someone who's not a believer has to keep running after that and keep kind of getting the dopamine hit, because they want that feeling to last forever. And so they're always seeking that. But a believer can rest in, no, these little moments are signs that there is something bigger and that this joy will be forever. And so I can hold on to it because that's the promise I have in Christ. And I think that's an interesting thing to think about, even within the context of joy in the midst of suffering. Like, we have experienced little moments in our lives. I think everyone can think of little moments in your life where you do feel this sense of deep joy. And the joy that can carry, even when I don't feel like the happy or the fun piece, because I know there is an ultimate day where that will be for eternity.
That's good.
Yeah.
I mean, I think in the rest of the series, one of the teachers should grab that.
Yeah.
Just steal that
I'll
from
send
you.
out the podcast.
You should.
Yeah.
I mean, I said I like the spiritual disciplines. Willard's book, The Celebration or Spirit of the, I forget what exactly the title of his book is, but one of the disciplines he lists is celebration. And I think that's one of the most neglected spiritual disciplines by Christians. I don't think we celebrate enough.
Yeah, rhythm or rooted. Rooted grads out there.
Yes, right. Yeah, supposed to celebrate. We're supposed to find joy in those things. But yeah, I really like that.
Yeah. So I thought it was really interesting, like I said, how you broke down all of the interactions. And I felt myself getting emotional, actually, at maybe the funniest part, but the part where you walked through how James hadn't believed in Jesus. And, there's even in scripture talks about how James was kind of like, why don't you go do your miracles up at the Feast of Booths? Because they didn't really believe in him. Go do it somewhere else, And then Jesus passes. And then you kind of walked through the scripture of just he appeared to the 500. He appeared to all of these giant groups of people. And then right in the middle, kind of sandwiched between two big groups of people, is like, and then he appeared to James. And I think I found that so touching. I thought that was really beautiful, that James, who maybe was kind of a difficult person in Jesus's life, that Jesus felt it so important to just one-on-one appear to James. And it feels intimate, I think, and relational and touching. And I'm curious what you think we can learn from Jesus, even in his relationship with James there, about difficult people.
I think so when I was going, I just like sort of put in all the times James is mentioned in the New Testament. And so I started to walk through each one. And when I came to that one, like, I was actually thrilled.
Yeah.
Like, I think I don't know. I mean, I don't think I forgot, or I just didn't realize that, he did come to him.
I'd never paid attention to that in Scripture.
So I know when I was doing the study for this, and that text you just brought up, I didn't include. That was a cool one too. There's lots of other spots where James is, but that just like, you said emotional. It just really touched me, and it just got me thinking about, I can't wrap my mind around what that encounter would have been like. But, was James like a difficult person in Jesus's life? Maybe, right? Like if he was
saying
this
go somewhere else because we don't believe in you.
Get out of here. So I would think that, would that have hurt Jesus to have like his younger brother just, basically dismiss him? For him to take the time to see him, and I don't think it was like just a quick, right? I don't think he just appeared, hey, and then left. They had to have a conversation, right? They had to take a walk. They had to, I wish that was recorded. I want to know what Jesus said to him. But there's certainly like a lot of forgiveness there, a lot of compassion there, just a lot of empathy there. Almost like, dude, I get it. Like, I understand why you didn't believe.
Yeah.
Like, but here it is, and here I am. And I do let sometimes my mind like wander off to like, cause there's so many questions I have in heaven. Like what was going on there? So you can suppose that this is what, but I love to sometimes take a scripture like that and really think through like, okay, these are real people. Yeah. Like what was going on in that moment?
Yeah. Yeah. I think just even knowing if you grew up with a sibling or you have kids who are siblings, just knowing the intimacy of that relationship anyway, with the trials and the intimacy though, it just seems so intentional of Jesus that he could show up to James with a bunch. It would have been way more efficient for him to be like, I'll show up to James with the other 500. Yeah. But it was like, he showed up to 500 and then he just showed up directly to James. And I think it's an interesting thing to ponder and meditate on. Okay, so as we begin to study James, I'm curious about any resources for those who want to dive. I know a lot of our small groups or even individuals, when we start a new series, kind of dive into similar, like the same topic during their devotionals. Yeah. So any resources for people who want to dive deeper into James?
Yeah, I think for me, the one person that scripturally like really exemplifies trials is Joseph, right? Like he went through so many different trials, and at the end, all those trials, were summed up in the fact that it was, for all of that, he saved Israel, like his family and everything. So
Joseph, Old Testament Joseph.
Yeah. Sorry.
Just making sure. Yeah. He went through trials too. So yeah.
He did. Joseph, Old Testament. So there's a lot of great resources out there on Joseph. I jotted these couple down that I have read. Dreamer to Deliverer, R.C. Sproul, pretty thick, pretty heavy. Prisoner to Prince, D.A. Carson, again, really pretty. If you were looking for something like a little lighter, you'll get through this. Lucado wrote a book on Joseph's trials that's just, a little bit easier read. So I think if you want to, as we head into this book on trials, I think a study of Joseph, like he exemplifies trials. His whole life was, it seemed like one trial after another, one letdown, one disappointment, one, hey, boy, everything's going well, and no, now it's not. Yeah. And then Levi Lusco wrote a book called Through the Eyes of a Lion. He's a pastor somewhere out in Montana or something. He's written a lot of stuff, but he lost his daughter like to an asthma attack, like just devastating. And he wrote one of the grittiest books, I think, on trials and on suffering that I've ever read. It's probably 10 years at least old now. We did a series at Northway a long time ago called On the Shores of Grief. And I know that I mentioned that book in that series where I just felt like he certainly didn't use any of those slogans like, oh, you'll get through this. Like he really went for it, and in the real bitterness and the hurt and But yeah, so those are a couple things that come to mind when I think about.
That's great. Thank you. We can link those even in the show notes. And that's probably even a good moment while I'm thinking about it to remind anyone who's listening that as we dive in, we are going to cover some tough topics. And so this is a good opportunity as things come up. If you have questions that you would like to ask a pastor directly through our app, our Northway app, you can submit your questions and we can ask them here on the podcast. So as questions begin to ponder or stew as you're as we're working through the series, feel free to ask those questions here by submitting them. Anything you're most looking forward to in this series, or any last words for our congregation as we get started?
Yeah, I was telling somebody after church, James is not I wouldn't say it's one of my favorite books of the Bible. It's not a least favorite. It's just not one that, so I'm looking forward to it personally, to dig into it through the summer, because it's been a book that I've read. I've studied it. Haven't spent
as much time in.
Yeah, not really dug in. I do like the bluntness of it. I like the challenge of it. It's not an easy book, but it's pretty easy to understand. You know what I mean? It's not what do you mean there? Or it's pretty straightforward. So I think my challenge there, buddy, would be dig into this one. Come each week or watch it. Listen to this podcast each week for more insights into it. I really like the opening, the first part, because I think it's a great invite series, and I love that. I love to have a handle on something that, you can just look at the topics, and you have to know people that are dealing with some of those or facing some of those. I had some people come up to me already and say, I'm going to make sure my mom comes to this one because she's struggling with this. So I think I said it in that witnessing sermon that I did. There's something really special about a church service when you got a friend that hasn't been or never been or been a long time to church, in church with you. It really does make the service come to life a lot more because you're really thinking about them. So I would challenge us all to consider just being really consistent through the summer. What I also like is I know there's a lot of travel in the summer, people, but you grab it, then you can just grab it on the app or online and stay caught up as we travel along.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to it.
Me too.
Thanks for being here, Scott. Always great to talk to you.
Always
you made it through the icebreakers.
I got through the icebreaker.
Kind of even laughed. So maybe you liked it even.
We'll see.
All right. See you again sometime soon.